Who's ready for Bungo Stray Dogs tonight? Hey, it's Romania Black. And yeah, it's so weird how this series goes from like a 180. Last week, I was dreading episode 6. Dreading it. I was not having it. I was not looking forward to it. And tonight, I'm like, oh no, I'm excited. I really love, of course, it's Bungo Stray Dogs, so we can't really get the cart before the horse. Just because we had a really great episode last week where Bram and Aya made like the best duo ever, and then Dazai's with the worst people ever. I mean, just because it made for an amazing episode, that doesn't mean that things could still go off the rails and be awful in this episode, because it's Bungo Stray Dogs, so anything can literally happen. But with that being said, I'm really excited to see where it goes. So yeah, I have lots of comments to get through we need to talk about before we dive into episode 7, but I'm just, I need more of the same shenanigans like last episode, because last episode, several people were commenting, it was the most Bungo Stray Dogs of Bungo Stray Dogs episodes. I'm fully convinced. Yes, if there is an episode that if I was to show someone, they're like, what's Bungo Stray Dogs about? I'm like, episode 6 of season 5, go watch it. And they'd be like, but I'm skipping 5 seasons. And I'm like, it's fine. But it's not. So yeah, Tamiya noted that Fukuchi and Fukuzawa are actually in some realms called double Fuku, which just sounds like double FU. And I'm like, can their ship name be called double FU? I really like this, just 2 birds in one stone. 2 birds in one stone. Can we call it that? Oh my God. But apparently it's because the authors were always tied together. And so I was like, that's kind of interesting. Nice. Depossessed was like, okay, with Fitzgerald, if Fitzgerald had the sword, we were breaking this down. If Fitzgerald had the power of the sword, he has to use money to use his powers. And the thing about the sword is, do we give the sword a value, or is it kind of invaluable? So again, Fitzgerald using the sword would be very weird, and I'm not sure if the logistics would work for it, but it's what has Fitzgerald been doing? We don't know. Who knows? There's so many characters at this point that are off doing their own things that I'm just ready for them to pop up at any given moment. I feel like the mangaka made the Black Lizard Port Mafia group vampires just to get them out of the way. Just to be like, okay, we need to put them aside. Don't worry about them. I don't have anything to do with them. So I'm like, oh my God. But yeah, user noted that Taruko is the redheaded girl in the Hunting Dogs. I forget her name every time. It's Taruko. I will probably forget it again because that name sounds bland to me. I don't know. Techo and Taruko, they're too similar. I forget them all the time. And it's Tachihara and Tanizaki. There's too many T names in this series. There's too many A names, but those characters are pretty easy to remember. So, but Taruko, I will do my best. And then they were like, wouldn't Mori as a vampire be really aesthetically funny and fitting? I'm like, aesthetically fitting? Yes. Funny? No. Mori as a vampire is terrifying, and we already have enough problems with Akutagawa being a vampire. Mori does not need to jump in the fray either. I don't want no vampiric, dear Lord, the little girl that's with him. Oh my gosh, you know who I'm all talking about. My mind has gone blank thinking of Taruko's name. But yeah, no, Elise, there we go. We don't need vampire Elise going around killing people. Absolutely not. No. Nintendo Girl talked about how Jono, I really like Nintendo Girl's concept here. If you get a chance to go read their comment, please do for episode 5. It was really nice. Talking about how Jono isn't a great person. He's a sadist. He kind of like takes pleasure in people's pain, but he's not evil. And I feel like Jono is kind of emblematic of everything that Dazai talks about, and he talked about in season 3 with Fyodor, about how, people that are sinners, they're the most interesting people because they can, do all sorts of things. They can change their mind, they can become better, they can become worse. And I feel like Jono is exactly the type of person that Dazai's talking about in that example. So I really think that's interesting. And it's kind of heartbreaking, right? Their relationship with Fukuchi, which we'll talk about in a second. But Caitlin4865 talks about how Jono's betrayal by Fukuchi is heartbreaking because, and go read Caitlin's comment too with episode 5. It's fantastic. But talking about how Jono had gone from thinking that all he could do was hurt people and taking pleasure from that. And then Fukuchi shows him that, no, you can save people. And Jono kind of finds a knack for it and thinks that he feels better saving people than hurting people. So he kind of like starts to get all into that and it's like, oh yeah, this is what I'm meant to do. And Fukuchi offers him a place in the Hunting Dogs. And he's like, yes, this is the place for me. And I can, expand upon this, kind of like what Dazai did with the agency. And then to find out the betrayal is to find out that Fukuchi doesn't actually think that Jono's a hero. Fukuchi's just been using him and being like, oh, well, you were just doing this to benefit yourself personally. You don't really like saving people. You're a criminal. And that he never believed in Jono, and that he was just waiting to use him because, oh, you want to go back to that life of crime, right? And hurting people, you like that more than saving them, right? It's so good. I hadn't thought of it that way. And Caitlin pointing out how Fukuchi's the one that hasn't changed. Fukuchi's the one that's fake. Fukuchi's the one that's just saving people, and it's a facade, and he has his own vendetta and is so hell-bent, and it's like twisted and warped him in so many ways. But Jono legit found a calling in justice and saving people, and so that betrayal, like, it gives me hope, though, too, that Jono, we didn't see him at all last episode. The mangaka kind of conveniently, like, pushed him off to the side, and so I get hope that maybe either he's not really a vampire and he's finagled his way out of it somehow, or if he is, that Bram, who's now, you know, Aya's kind of like maybe got the reins of the situation, maybe she can make him use Jono to actually help them. I don't know. I'm hoping he's not a vampire. I'm hoping he's found a way out of it and that the mangaka's just trying to make it a clever reveal, but we'll see, right? But I thought that was a really, really good comment. I really, really loved that. Yeah, and then of course, I like the comparison that Caitlin made. It would be like if Dazai was just using Atsushi for their ability. And I'm like, oof. Yeah, no joke. Alexander Q said that the agency, I forget in the last episode, all these things were happening that Alexander Q was like, the agency's back together. Like, everybody except Dazai is there. The gang's all back together except for Dazai. And I'm like, they are, aren't they? Which, you know, on the one hand makes me feel comforted in a way that they're all back together because I didn't like when they split up. But then I'm also like, kind of like now, that if one person gets infected by a vampire, then they all could get infected. So it's a very precarious situation. Again, notes, does the show suggest that Europe is just one giant union? Brexit hasn't happened in the Bungo Stray Dogs universe, clearly. I don't know. I feel like this is kind of an alternate history, an alternate timeline. So yeah, if the mangaka wanted to make Europe this big conglomerate, why not? I mean, I guess it feels very much like when I'm American, I'm from the US, so when I watch other countries like portray America, there's things that are very accurate, and then there's things that I'm like, well, maybe one part of it. So I feel like it's one of those things too, that unless you're from that place, you won't really notice it. Like, I didn't really think about it because I'm not from Europe, and then I'm sure that's funny that people are like, wait a minute, hold on. But I think the mangaka kind of gets the right to do whatever they want because this isn't exactly purely based on the timeline we live in. And then they also noted that a platonic OTP is a bro TP. Yes, I think I've heard a reactor too say bro TP. It's so fun. I love bro TPs, and in this series especially. And then the scene, they luckily translated what was on those panels that I could not translate last episode that was driving me insane. And I didn't want to look it up online because I was afraid there'd be a spoiler. So they translated it for me. I was like, thank you. And apparently the one says it's the British Intelligence Special Unit Secret Delivery. Makes sense. And then the other one with Ongo was saying 11 hours earlier. So, okay, so Ongo had made preparations for all this stuff like way in advance from when all this stuff went down. So good to know. And then Dana finally talks about Dazai and Ongo, that they need to make up, and that maybe Ongo does care about. I agree. I think Ongo does care about Dazai a lot. I think Ongo feels very guilty about what happened to Oda, and Dazai clearly doesn't, care much for what happened to Oda because of Ongo and his involvement. But I think that Ongo, does like Dazai. He just doesn't really know how to tread the waters because there is that awkwardness between them. And I really would love for them to make up in the series. That'd be great. Sigma is 3 years old, not 3 days. And I was like, in the words of Bram, he's not even old enough to use a loom. The casino was made in 3 days, not Sigma. Sigma's 3 years old. He's just a toddler. He's in his terrible threes with the terrible 3 in front of him, right? And speaking of which, I feel like, I was trying to make a comparison in the last reaction. I feel like Dazai with Nikolai and Fyodor, it's like Dazai, we know, is not mentally stable completely. He's had suicidal ideations. He's not the healthiest person. He doesn't treat his body healthily. And it's kind of like someone that has been an addict is suddenly thrust into a padded room with 2 other addicts that are actively using, and he's trying to stay sober, and it's just not panning out well. And there's nobody to give Dazai like some good recommendations on what to do, so he's just kind of feeling enabled, and it's hard to watch. It was funny last episode because of how chaotic it was, but when you sit down and break it down, you're like, oh, this shit's weird and not good. And I don't like the fact of Fjordor and Dazai taking lethal injections, but we'll touch on that this episode. And then finally, I know I've talked forever, finally, the candy shot with Rampo is not in the manga, and I feel fine knowing that, because I was like, what is with that? And they were like, what is Bones doing? And I'm like, I don't know. They just randomly picked this candy shot to be emblematic. I was like, what does it mean? What's the symbolism? What are you telling us, Bones? What don't we understand yet? But yeah, so what do we do? I don't know, but I'm really excited. I'm hoping that the high maintains itself. We have this weird game that Nikolai wants them to play. I hope that pans out. I don't know how to feel, because part of me is like, oh yeah, Dazai win and Nikolai die, and the other part of me is like, I don't want Nikolai to die yet because I want to know more about him. So I'm very torn, but what can we do? So we're not going to waste any more time. That's what we're going to do. I will say it has been insanely hot. The temperature got up to like 98 degrees Fahrenheit today, and that's not with the heat index. It was just that hot, and tomorrow and the next day are supposed to be even hotter. And so the internet has kind of been wonky the last couple reactions I've done. I don't know if it's the heat or what it is, but if it gets wonky here, I may have to pause and like restart. It's happened the last 2 I've done, so I'm hoping that doesn't happen this time, but we'll see. So just if you see a little glitch, you will know what's happened. So in any case, we are going to start episode 7 of season 5 of Bungo Stray Dogs. So excited. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's do this, y'all. I was feeling real great. I was feeling real great going into this episode. And even with Bram, even when Kenji showed up and I was a little bit worried, I was like, okay, well, maybe, Kenji's there. And then I realized I had like a moment where I became Kunakita and I was like, no, Kenji's there. So they're not getting out. Damn it. Show, why can't we have nice things for one episode? Please? Man, you all did amazing with not spoiling me that Shuya was a freaking vampire. I was so convinced. I knew it was Chuya from a few episodes back, but I was so convinced. I'm like, oh, he's going to show up, team up with Dazai, bust him out of there, and we'll be right as rain. No, he's a vampire, and he's there with Nikolai. Now the question is why? My question is, with all of this, why? Because it seems like when Bram is not controlling the vampires, it seems like if Bram is not controlling the vampires, that they just kind of roam around like zombies, right? They're just roaming around like endless zombies. But the thing about this episode is the powers are a little inconsistent. They're a little inconsistent because in the last episode, Fukuchi was walking around with Octagao and the other vampires, like leading them, but he didn't have Bram. So how can he lead them without Bram saying so? Because then he comes back and needs Bram to control the military, but he's been controlling Octagao and the others seemingly, and then Chuya's out doing his own thing, not seemingly paying attention to anything that Bram said, unless Bram told him to go, unless Fukuchi ordered Bram to tell Chuya to go kill Dazai, then I guess that's a thing, but then I guess maybe that's the case, but I'm just like, show, you need to make Bram's powers consistent and have more definition, because I feel like that is my one nitpick right now with the show is the zombie powers, because I was all about if Bram had to control them, if they were just mindless zombies wandering around until Bram gave them a task, that part I can understand. But the fact that Fukuchi can order them around, why does he even need Bram? Why does he need Bram to do anything if he can do it himself? So I don't know, that part irks me a little bit because the powers with the zombies aren't consistent and there's a little bit of plot contrivance there. I'm like, well, you're just kind of making them do whatever to be convenient for the plot. But I don't know. I was feeling great. I'm glad, we'll talk about this episode. There were some things that were kind of fake outs that I'm glad were fake outs. And then there's other parts where I was like, I'm sorry, but when Kenji was just standing there talking to Bram, I'm like, you guys can talk and run. You can talk while you run. you can make it too. the exit, but it kind of makes sense on a number of reasons. Kenji didn't want to leave Okagawa behind. They all came there together. They were going to leave together. But I'm like, you could get to a checkpoint away. I don't know. I feel like Techo and Kenji could get along if they weren't enemies. I think that's true of most of the Bungo Stray Dogs and the Hunting Dogs. I think that's true with the Agency and the Hunting Dogs. They could get along if they weren't mortal enemies. But damn, we need to talk about this episode. Next episode's the Rule of 8. Y'all, next episode is the Rule of 8. You all realize this, right? The 8th episode of every season is batshit insane. And it's snuck up on us. But next week is the Rule of 8. I don't know how I feel about it. So what have we got stacked against us? Well, what are the problems? Well, first of all, we have Dazai that supposedly is going to die in 30 minutes or less. He's going to die before the pizza arrives to Rampo. So there's that. That's a problem. Chuya is vampire. That's a problem. So there's that. And then we also have the idea that Kenji's knocked out. Will he become a vampire? I don't know. What will Techo do? Techo seems to want to find Jono, so Jono's hidden somewhere. My biggest fear this episode was that Jono was going to show up and turn Techo into a vampire. And I'm like, well, what do we do there? Where the fudge is Fukuchi? Because he's out pacing around freaking out. So where is he? The only relief I got this episode was when it was Techo that showed up and not Fukuchi. Because I was like, if Fukuchi shows up around Aya and Bram, it's over. I'm like, what do we do about that? And then Teruko, I don't trust her at all. Teruko with Atsushi, nope. When Atsushi's like, oh, just stand here. I'm going to go call Rampo on the phone. I'm like, he better have a plan. It better be that he's faking her out. Because I'm like, if you turn your back on her, she has powers to make you old or young. No. I'm like, and then there's the whole thing of what Nikolai, I don't know what to make with Nikolai seems to me like he's the one that could easily get out of this situation because of his powers. Like if he wanted to escape the vampires, he could just boom, teleport out. No problem. He's trying to expose Fyodor's ability. Which is fair. We don't really exactly know what it is. We just know it's killed people. We've watched it kill a kid before, but we really didn't know how it worked. So I can see why they want to know how his power is, but we need to go through this episode because I feel like Dazai not being freaked out about Chuya showing up is interesting. He supposedly has 30 minutes to live. How's that working out? He picked Sigma, which is interesting. I think because he knew that maybe he knew Chi was going to show up and be a vampire. Does Dazai know about them being vampires? I don't know. He's getting his... I like that the angel is Ongo. Right? That is it, right? Ongo is the angel. I freaking love it. I'm like, yes, please. That he's the... We talked last episode about Dazai being like the shoulder devil for Ongo. If Ongo's the angel for Dazai, the flip of that would be just wonderful. But yeah, poor Sigma. Sigma's like, I don't know what I'm doing here. This whole episode, the first half of it, I really like the first half with the Mersalt part. The Nikolai games are batshit insane. They are crazy. Does not seem rational at all. But I'm curious. I'm curious what they're going to do with it, right? I'm curious where it's going to go. And poor Sigma is just like, I don't know what to expect out of this. He's like, what's going to happen? So they use this like rainbow grid. I'm like, it's rainbow like every character in the Mersalt right now. A special ability space created to hold different ability users called the Happy Ball. I feel like at the port in the sky. I've been wondering what the title of this episode set means. And I feel like at the port in the sky refers to Nikolai's powers. It's the portal that they go through to try to get out of Mersalt. I feel like that's connected to it. So yeah, I love that we start at the basement, like the bottom floor. I like that it's literally like Dante's Inferno. They're climbing out of the different levels of hell to get to the top. It's a nice little reference. I like it. And so they're like on the 4th floor of the detention area. So we went upwards, right? The world's most elite security firms are standing watch. So yeah, it's this big elaborate thing. And God, can I just say Miyano Mamoru's voice acting? Miyano Mamoru, I love him as a voice actor because he commits. He doesn't care to get goofy. He doesn't care to get silly, but it's always in this like sexual way. Even when he's like giggling or even when he's doing like wow or doing like something crazy, there's like a little edge of sexiness to it that you didn't have to do, but we love you for it. So I love Miyano just giving it 110% here. And then Fyodor is just like a freaking cat, right? He looks like Violet Chachki standing over there like waiting to insult someone. So yeah, it seems impossible to break out, right? They have these interlocking doors that change every 6 hours. If you get the passcode wrong once, you're stuck there forever. If you do anything to the security, there's like water, not even water, but a hydrogenated water will come in. You will sink. You'll basically drown to death. There's elevators, there's guards. It just seems like this impenetrable fortress. And Dazai and Fyodor don't even seem phased. They don't even seem phased. But they've just injected themselves with the lethal dose, so they're just buying time at this point. And the fact that they both like have this like sparkle around them, it's like, I'm with Sigma. He's like, they're gleefully picturing the other drowning to death. Like, what the fudge? And then I do love when Nikolai is like going through all the motions and explaining things. Like Dazai's little face, like he has little sparkles in his eyes and looks like a little chibi character. I will say, if Oda was here right now, Oda would have slapped Dazai and been like, what are you doing? But Oda, I think, would be far too literal and pragmatic for a situation like this. I think Sigma works good in this situation because he's so innocent. And Oda, despite being a good-hearted character, was very jaded. He was very, conditioned to the system. So he had some wear and tear on him, right? He just was not the type of person that would joke around like Dazai does. Sigma is so innocent and naive that it kind of works him playing off of Dazai. And Dazai is not going to reveal his hand. No, Dazai is not going to reveal his hand to the audience. He is not going to tell us what he says, I will allow you each to take one of these items. And Dazai sitting there thinking like one of these items could include Sigma. And that's what he chooses. I mean, the coins would be the worst option on the table because all they do is blow up. That's not really going to help you. I mean, it could help you temporarily. There's a radio used by the armed guards, so you could know where the guards were, but again, that may not be the most helpful thing. A top level clearance card, which you need to get out, presumably. It's the door to the ocean heliport can only be opened by one of those. And the coin bombs, which nobody's really going to want. And then the last thing is a satellite phone that you could use to contact somebody on the first floor. So, I mean, the coins are the least valuable. Knock them out. All they can do is blow stuff up. But we've already established the security here is so tight. If you accidentally blow up the wrong thing, you're dead. You're trapped there. No. The third useless thing would be the radio, because the radio that you could use to find out where the guards are, well, okay, that's just going to increase your tension even more. Meh. And so then it's the security card or the satellite phone. Now, the security card is ideally what you would, without, albeit Sigma, you'd want to pick first because that's your way out. You have to have that to get out. The other thing is if you get to the first floor, you could use the satellite phone to get somebody else to come and pick you up. But then what are the odds they show up in time to rescue you? And what if the rest of the world's vampires by then? Then what do we do? So, I mean, Sigma's your best bet. But I understand why Fyodor chose the security card. Right? And Dazai lets him choose first. He's like, well, thank you very much. I'll take this one. It's necessary to win. And Sigma notes that Fyodor is incomprehensible and freakish with his actions, but he is calculated to a fault. Like Fyodor is not chaos. He's not pure chaos. There is a rhyme and reason to everything he does. It's just there's like a level of apathy to everything he does. Like he will orchestrate this entire big elaborate plot just because I wanted to do it that way. Right? Which is probably why Nikolai's so attracted to him. He's like, I'm the same way. It's like, oh my God. And then Dazai picks Sigma. And Nikolai's like, oh, well. And the look that Fyodor gives him, like, oh. Oh, that was an option. Oh, well, there is like a level of. Here's the thing: you have all these different ships with Dazai, right? You have Ongo and Dazai are like this. There's like repressed. It's like a repressed bro TP, right? Dazai and Ongo, they're like, it's repressed. They have history. They just need to hug it out, but they're platonic, so it's like a bro TP. Then you have Atsushi and Dazai, and I've seen people ship Atsushi and Dazai, which I'm like, no, but it's very much like the mentor and student relationship, right? Atsushi and Dazai are like the student relationship. Same with Akutagawa. Akutagawa, I think, is the exact same with Dazai. It's that mentor-student relationship, right? Then you have Dazai and Oda, which I for sure ship. I definitely ship, and it's more like they're the partners that were like not on the same task force, but they were like partners in the organization, and there was that level of mutual respect within one another. You could argue that Oda's more of like a mentor to Dazai, and it's kind of like that Sushi and Dazai relationship. I think they were closer in age, so for me, it's more like they're partners in the organization. There was an equal respect, right? They're based on respect with one another, right? Love it. Then you have Dazai and Chuya. I am not going to put Dazai and Mori up here because it's weird and wrong, and I don't respect it. I'm Lucille Bluth. I don't understand the question, and I won't answer to it. And then you have Dazai and Fyodor. I'm going to link Dazai and Sigma up here to this platonic realm. Dazai's just here to troll Sigma. Dazai just is using Sigma, I'm sure, because he's the most convenient object. Then you have Dazai and Chuya and Dazai and Fyodor. Dazai and Chuya is like, it's just like that enemies to partners to enemies to lovers. It's interesting because you could say that it's just like Dazai and Chuya, they're like enemies, but then they became partners in the Port Mafia, and then they work together, and now they're separated, but they kind of still work together, and it's like, it's more playful, I guess. It's definitely a more playful trolling of a relationship. There's respect between Dazai and Chuya, for sure. There has to be. There's a trust level there and respect, but it's more playful and trolling, right? It's surprisingly innocent. Dazai and Fyodor is like just sexual tension and angst and enabling. It's like the most toxic relationship, right? Where the Fyodor just looks at Dazai and is just like, oh, you think you're so clever. It's just, there's like the way he like nudges, the way he like cocks his head at Dazai has like oozes sexual tension, and Dazai's just smiling there being like, aha, you didn't think I'd choose that, did you, Fyodor? It's like they're still playing chess against one another. Chuya wouldn't play chess. Chuya plays checkers. Chuya would look at the chessboard with Dazai and just flip it like a damn cat and would be like, no. But Dazai and Fyodor are like playing this game of 5D chess with one another. It's like their foreplay. It's creepy. And Sigma's like, what are you thinking? I don't like this. Like the Sigma's like, I don't know how to deal with this. Help, please. And so yeah, so then we cut back to Bram and Aya. And poor Aya, she is just like, what do we do? She's like, never mind him. Don't worry about my dad. And she's like, basically, it's hard to get out of an airport once it's cracked down, which was all the more reason why they should have left earlier. So she says, just to be sure, you can't give the guards orders, can you? And he says, no, my powers have been taken away by this holy sword. I'm like, so all Bram can do is just turn them and control specific vampires? Is that literally it? Has his ability basically become that he stopped the one vampire. He intimidated him. But basically all he can do is create more vampires and essentially control a few of them to do specific things? I'm like, ugh, it's been taken away by this holy sword. We've established you can't just take the holy sword out without, because it's attached to his brain. But the only time when I can command my kin is when Fukuchi wields the sword. Ah, so when Fukuchi wields the sword, I'm assuming he uses his ability to make the sword more powerful and it connects to Bram. That's problematic. And she's like, seriously, I'm with her. She's like, really? This seems so problematic. And he's like, we have to run. And then, yeah, the one shows up. Ugh, hate it. So, one thing I don't hate is Dazai and Sigma. Dazai and Sigma together, amazing. Love their chemistry. I love that Sigma has a very Atsushi vibe to him, but it's not as, I don't want to use the word naive, because I don't think, Atsushi was very innocent and was kind of like, I feel like Atsushi and Sigma have a very similar dynamic, and maybe that's why Dazai plays so well off of it. But why bring Sigma into this? What's the point? Why? He's like, what are you plotting? He's like, do you know what I'm thinking right now? And he's like, what? It's so big. It's like a ballroom. Let's dance. Oh, man. And him just like, again, Miyano Mamoru. Only Miyano Mamoru could pull this off. Like the voice, like the, like all the humming and dancing. Like Sigma's like, I don't know what to do. And he's like, what are you going to use me for? Sigma's like, I know you're trying to use me, but what is the deal? And Dazai just dancing around with him. How will you defeat Fyodor? And he's just like dancing. And also, he's like, stop! Like, what was the point of... And then, yeah, he's like, I stopped. Like, dipping him. Mm-hmm. He's like, you... Stop dicking around for once. I love that Sigma said stop dicking around. That's amazing. Dazai cannot do that. No, Dazai is always dicking around. He's getting closer to the exit as we speak. And Dazai's like, no, he's not. He's not leaving at all. He's just sitting there. Mm-hmm. And Nikolai's like, why aren't you moving? Like, why aren't you going? He's like, you could swap your presents if you wanted to. He's like, what's going on? He's like, I have another card to play. Mm-hmm. He's like, oh, okay. You've got cards of your own up your sleeve. I like that Nikolai's not necessarily fooled by that. He's not necessarily intimidated by that because, one, Nikolai's kind of in no danger. He's the one that has the antidote. But two, he can just peace out. But I like that Nikolai kind of seems to respect Fyodor a little bit, being like, oh, you have tricks up your sleeve too. You're like a magician too. We're perfect for each other. I'll murder you and prove it. And it's like, okay. My thing is, though, why? How did Fukuchi order Chuya to go to Fyodor? Did he order him to go there? Because I'm like, he had to have used Bram to make that order before. So how did Chuya get there? Why is Chuya there? If Fukuchi didn't order him, then how did he, on his own free will, go that way the whole time? Oh, I do love, though, that Aya, she stepped in and she turned around. And when the vampire, like, kicked at her, she, like, put herself in between her and Bram. That was really sweet. Again, why the vampire didn't try to bite her, I don't know, but I'm glad he didn't. I don't want Aya to become a vampire at all. Bless it. And then it goes to pick her up, and that's when he, like, leans over and says, you're disrespectful. And the vampire kind of freezes. So he can do a little bit there. He can make them stop. He just can't really order them around, right? He's like, what do I do? And that's when Kenji shows up. He's like, Rambo told me to help you. And I'm like, son of a bitch. So the thing with Sigma, we cut back to Dazai dancing with Sigma some more. How wonderful freedom is. Mm-hmm. Like, what's the deal? How long are you going to dance? Don't forget about the game. And he's like, oh, well, do you want to go tour around the jail? I'm like, are they going to use Chuya to destroy everything and break them out? Are they just banking on Chuya destroying things and getting it to where they can leave the facility? Is that what they're banking on? Is that what Dazai believes he's going to use it for? He's like, let's go on a tour. And then I like that he's just so bored. I like the little chibi things of Dazai with the blushy face. I'm like, mangaka, Asagiri, what are we doing? So then Sigma says the whole reason they went there, he's like, I'm going on my own. He's like, I can't let myself lose. So 5 days ago, they said they wanted to expose Fyodor's ability and get rid of him. And of course, it makes sense why Nikolai would want to find this out. Nikolai's like, I want to find out his ability because he wants to kill him. And Sigma's like, I don't know if I can do. He's like, this request is to your benefit too. He's like, Fyodor-kun will soon find out that your assassination was a failure and he'll get rid of you. He's like, don't you want to go home? And it's sad that Sigma has like never really had this concept of home. He's never had one of his own. So he just imagines this house and the tulips and everything. And so he decides the only way to secure that possibility is to get rid of Fjordor. I'm defeating Fjordor. I'm going to find my own home where I can be safe from others and get out of this crazy place and away from these yahoos. I won't let anyone use me anymore. I like that Sigma has, in his very short lifespan, come across the idea that he's being used by everybody around him. Like Fjordor's used him, Nikolai's used him, Dazai is using him, and he's very aware of that. And I feel like Dazai understands that he's aware of that. He's like, okay, I see how it is. And he's like, you're lots of fun, pal. He's like, okay, I'll get you out of here alive. He's like, get off me. And that's when, Chuya shows up. And this one guy, who was the most powerful gifted guard in the prison, I feel like, again, it was just him trying to show how powerful Chuya is, right? And then he's like, how do you know? Yeah, an angel whispered so in my ear that there's an intruder here. And so then Fjordor is just so confident that the troops are going to show up and someone's going to rescue him. Now, I was so convinced Fjordor was going to use his ability here. I thought he was just going to use it to kill the guards or control them or something. But no, that's not the case. He's like, I know who's here. He's like, I finally have my pawns. And so that's when, I'm like, who shoots? I'm like, did Chuya shoot the guards with bullets or whatever? How can he do that as a zombie? It doesn't make sense. Powers, hacks, why? It's like, I know who the intruder is. Damn it, Fjordor. That's a nasty card he's playing. And Dazai doesn't give anything away. You'd think Dazai would be more upset that, the ship of his life is, a zombie vampire now. My thing is, they say that they're dead. Like Tachihara says he's dead. I'm like, are the characters that become zombies really going to die? I can't picture Asagiri killing off Chuya along with Tachihara and all the Black Lizard. I just can't picture him killing them all off, or Octagawa, but Bram, what do we do with him? Because that's so complicated because now we know Bram has that sword stuck in him. He can't do anything, so Bram can't die. So are all these characters doomed to be dead forever? So what are we doing? I don't like where it's headed. No. And so then he's like, the gifted intruder manipulates gravity. I hate it. I was so looking forward to him. And then he just shows up, just screeching. I'm like, why is he not biting Fjordor and turning him into a vampire? What's the deal? And so he's like, that makes it 2 versus 2. Yeah. It's me and you against Fjordor and Chuya. I'm like, though, that if somehow, I have no clue how the vampire zombiness can get reversed. I don't know how Bram can do that. If he can relinquish control, I guess he can. I mean, here's the thing. How did they stop the vampire outbreak the first time? Did they just have to kill all the vampires and then that was it? Or did Bram release his power and his ability and stop it? My thing is, if Dazai can get to Bram, he can deactivate the ability, and we would think that those that have been turned to vampires would cease to be vampires. Now, will Octagawa die, or has he been regenerated by the ability of becoming a zombie vampire? I'm assuming that's the case. We got to get Dazai to Bram, but the question is, how is that going to work? So I don't know. Also, Dazai touching Sigma, I'm like, if Sigma had an ability, did Dazai deactivate it? Is that why he was dancing with Sigma to see if he could deactivate whatever his ability is? If he's an ability user? Is he altering the page by touching Sigma? I don't know. I'm so curious. But yeah, I'm like, what is going to end up happening? Do you know the phrase tear away and toss? And that's literally what Kenji ends up doing, is tear away the zombies and tossing them away. So Bram, I'm sorry if I was annoying at this part of the reaction, but I wanted Kenji to run away with them, but we've established why he probably couldn't do that. But I just love that Bram is looking over at Kenji like, oh, peasant, are you a farmer? Will you till my land? I'm like, that could be an innuendo or it could not be. So Rampazan said to save them, right? An abandoned coffin and countless katana marks. It wasn't hard for Rampazan to figure out that someone's running from Fukuchi. Yep, and that would be you. And so he's like, that outfit. I love Bram. He's like, that outfit, it smells of dirt. are you a farmer? I love he's like, are you interested in cultivating my land? I'm like, Bram, you need to pick better pickup lines than that. Kenji's far too young for you. I'm joking. No. But I love that he's just like, I love that Bram is this immortal vampire. We're on the verge of the apocalypse. Like, things can go totally south. And meanwhile, Bram is like, hey, if you're not busy, can you, does Bram even own land? No. What is happening? Are you interested in cultivating my land? And I like that Aya's like, really? He probably doesn't even have land. And Kenji's like, oh, well, thank you. He's like, I'm already working on my own farm. Oh my God, I'm a member of the detective agency on the side. And he's like, it's a side gig. I like the agency as a side gig. That's actually really funny. And then it's Techo that shows up. Whoever chases Bram and the girl into their own turf wins. Which is why I wanted them to get out, but I hate that Kenji has been seemingly defeated by Techo. I hate it. I feel like Techo seems more loyal to Jono, though, than Fukuchi. So I feel like that bodes not well, because I feel like Fukuchi will realize that and get rid of Techo or make him a vampire. Or he's going to run into Jono and Jono's going to make him a vampire. I don't know. This show gives me such little hopes, and then it just pulls the rug out from under them and takes them away. I don't know. The rule of 8's next week, and I'm not feeling good about it. I'm not feeling good about it. I was just starting to feel good about it, and now I'm not anymore, and I'm like, son of a bitch. And then I like that Atsushi's just Naruto running just permanently. It's great. I thought when he ran into Aya, I thought one of two things had happened. One, she had been turned into a vampire and they'd taken Bram, and this was a setup to turn Atsushi into a vampire. I thought that was the case. Or I thought that she had been chased away and Kenji was still fighting and Bram had been taken. I don't know what I thought, but it was not that it was Teruko at all. It was not that it was Teruko. And so then, yeah, they tell her to run with the vampire. And so for a second, I thought that Techo would be like, oh, Kenji, help me find Jono. For a second, I thought that was going to be the case. And I was so excited. I was like, yes, perfect. Jono was captured by the vampires when he was with the captain. In other words, the detective agency's behind it. And he's like, oh, there's a reason for that. Nope, but that's not the case. I was really hoping that Techo and Kenji would team up, but that doesn't seem to be happening. And then, meanwhile, Teruko, she gets the phone that Atsushi was trying to give her, and that was all part of his plan to see Tachihara and the video that he creates from it. I mean, I want to think that Teruko would believe Atsushi, but then I'm like, Teruko is hardcore devoted to Fukuchi. Teruko, she is hardcore, got the work boner for Fukuchi. So even when Atsushi's like, I convinced her using the Tachihara video, I'm like, did he really though? I don't think he did. I'm like, no, it's so frustrating, right? And then he's like, oh, well, I'll just get a hold of Rampo on the phone. Give me a moment. Rampo would have a chance of convincing her. And I'm like, don't turn your back on her. She is not someone you want to turn your back on, damn it. Why would you do that? And then, yeah, while she's watching him, she just has like this smile on her face. And I'm like, no. And we don't get to see what ends up happening. We see Kenji getting hurt. And they're the two strong ones. Like, Jono has a good ability. Teruko prides herself on being the strongest, but she more has like a time ability. It's really Techo that's got maybe the stronger ability in the end. Oh, I hate it. I hate it that he's just knocked out. The ending, the title of the next episode is not promising. The Land of Inhuman Demons. No, that sounds like a zombie takeover. Land of Inhuman Demons, part 1. Sounds like a zombie takeover episode, and I'm not about that life. Nope. Land of Inhuman Demons. Yeah, I mean, that could be like the gifted ability users and that they're going to take over, or The fact that we didn't see Fukuchi in this episode worries me, because I feel like he's going to show up next episode and things are going to be bad. I don't want Kenji to turn into a vampire, but I think he will, because I think Kenji's disposable like that. I don't think Atsushi will be turned into a vampire, because he's like our main protagonist, him and Dazai. But I don't know. What if Dazai gets turned into a vampire by Chuya? Oh my god. What if Dazai and Fyodor get turned into vampires so they don't die from the lethal injection? What if that's the case? What if Dazai gets turned into a vampire to not die from the lethal injection, just kind of like Octagawa got saved, but then Fyodor gets the antidote from Nikolai? What do we do then? I was feeling so good, y'all. I was feeling so good, and I was so excited, and then suddenly it's like, nope. I don't feel safe anymore. So yeah, I don't know about Figuchi. I don't know about this Chuya being a vampire. I don't know how Dazai and Sigma are getting out of this. I don't know if the whole idea was to let Chuya and them come to them. I don't know. Does Sigma have a special power we don't know about? I don't know. Where's Natsumi? Fukuzawa? What's happening? Rampo had to have had a plan, and you would think Rampo would account for multiple angles. So a part of me, I'm kind of torn between two scenarios. A part of me is like, oh, well, this show's just faking us out and it'll have it all work out in the end. And then the other part of me is like, no, we had a nice happy moment. Now it's time for ultimate sadness again. At this point, I don't want Aya getting hurt. At this point, if Aya cannot become a vampire, let's not do it. Let's just avoid that. If her and Bram can go off and hide somewhere for the next 200 years, let's go do that. And we still don't know about the clock tower. The order of the clock tower is getting involved, and we still don't know that. Next episode is episode 8. And as we know, from prior experience, you have the first 4 episodes, which sets up things, which this season's been a bit unconventional because it's been just coming right off of season 4. So that you have the setup, and then episodes 5 through 8 are the conflict, which has been this. And then your last ones, 9 through 11, are the climax of the arc. And this 8th episode is like leading us into that arc. So in the next episode, we have to establish our threats right now are to Aya and Bram, as well as to Dazai. So everybody else seems like they're okay, but I'm like, how doom and gloom doomsday can we get before we get any happiness? And the saddest thing is we're getting close the end of the season. I know the manga is not too far ahead of this, so the people reading the manga may not even know the answers. So I don't know how to feel about it. I'm not happy about it. Oh, Bungo Stray Dogs, you make me feel so good, and then you strip it all away and make me feel anxiety again. I don't know what to expect next week. I'm completely in the dark. I'm looking forward to your comments down below. I do have somebody on Patreon that's been screening the comments and making sure there's no spoilers for me. So again, thank you, Geen, so much for screening these. I really, really appreciate it. It's helped me out more than you'll ever know, but okay. I'm excited for next week, but I'm going to be nervous as hell. So in the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back next week to see what happens in episode 8 of Bungo Stray Dogs season 5. Bye!